Hello, and welcome to the Hopes for School podcast, where we talk about student voice and share ideas for educational transformation, aka our Hopes for School. So excited today to have Alex Valencic on the program. Sorry, Alex, that Karen couldn't be here. She's in the midst of her final exams, but we're so grateful that you're here. Would love for everyone who doesn't know you to learn a little bit about you. So please tell us a little bit about yourself.
Yeah. Well, first of all, I just want to congratulate you on getting my last name correct. But then I realized that's like, oh, most of our interactions have been over Voxer. So it's hearing my name all the time. But I don't know why people have the hardest time getting the name Valencic correct. And I'm like, it's only 3 syllables, you guys. But I am Alex Valencic, and I am currently working as the professional learning coordinator in the Freeport School District in Northwestern Illinois. I have previously worked as a substitute teacher, a 4th grade teacher, an instructional technology specialist. And then when I came to work in Freeport, my original job title, which to this day I believe is the longest and most ridiculous job title in education, was officially the curriculum coordinator for 21st Century Teaching and Learning, International Baccalaureate World School Programs in Early Childhood Education. But
that is a mouthful, yes.
But my role was actually just at the 21st Century Teaching and Learning. But the school board hadn't caught up with the job titles for what people did. So there was an IB coordinator and there was an EC coordinator, but somehow my job title still had all of them. So and I've worked all over Illinois. I've lived in many different places, though. Most of my life has been in Illinois, but I spent a couple of years living in Southern California, and people are always jealous of that until they find out that I was living in the desert of Southern California, not the cool part on the coast, and also spent a semester studying abroad in Australia. But most of my life has been right here in Illinois.
That's wonderful. You wear many hats, and I know you're definitely a source. We've been connected through EduMatch for a long time, and you're always so willing to share ideas and resources and support in any way you can. So I definitely appreciate that. I don't think I introduced myself. I'm your host, Jennifer Casa-Todd, and author of the book Hopes for School. And I would just so grateful that educators like yourself have contributed idea spotlights to the book. And I would love to know, I would love to know a little bit more about, or if you could share a little bit more about your idea spotlight.
Yeah. So my idea spotlight was a way of reimagining how I was doing homework in my 4th grade classroom. And the background for it is when I first started teaching and had that full-time job, I inherited a classroom that had been occupied by a wonderful educator who had been in that room for 25 years and loved her to pieces. She did not throw anything away ever. Like, I always share with people that, like, when I first got into the room, started going through stuff, I was hired in 2011, and I found in a filing cabinet the building inventory from 1983, which happens to be the year I was born. And I was like, why? Why is this here? But also within that were filing cabinets full of photocopies of math homework assignment sheets that we had our math curriculum, and every lesson had, like, the homework assignment that went with it. And there were like 25, 30, sometimes 50 copies of it. And not really knowing any better, I was like, oh, yeah, math homework is a thing we do. So every day, homework went into the students' mailboxes. Kids would take it home. Some would bring it back. Some wouldn't. Some would have everything done. Some had like 1 or 2 done. The ones who tended to do the homework the most were the ones who didn't seem like they needed to do the practice. They understood the concepts you were doing. And the ones who weren't doing the homework were usually the ones who really would have benefited from that extra help, but they didn't want to do it. So I always kind of had this little bit of frustration about, like, why am I doing the homework? It doesn't seem to be making a big difference. But the catalyst for me came when I had one of my students who, his parent sent me a note on a homework assignment that had 2 problems out of 25 completed. And it said, Mr. Valencic, we're really sorry he didn't get this done. We spent 3 hours on it last night. If you send it back with him tomorrow, I promise we'll get it done over the weekend. And I was like, 3 hours? Why? Like, our school handbook said like homework for 4th grade should be like roughly 45 minutes a night, and 25 of those minutes should be reading. And this student and his parents spent like 3 hours just so totally frustrated. And then at the same time, I had a student who wasn't able to do his homework assignment because he was playing baseball and soccer and on like a youth football league. And he didn't have time. And it really got me thinking, what am I doing? Why am I doing it to these kids? Because it's not giving them what they need. And then the year ended. So I spent some time doing some research over the summer and found some fascinating research studies that found that at the elementary level, homework makes no difference whatsoever on the academic outcomes for the students. It doesn't help and it doesn't hurt. It has a net zero impact. Like, doing homework doesn't move the needle at all. Elementary school, a teeny tiny bit. High school, a little bit if it's not too much. But who defines too much? So I was like, all right, you know what? The research is clear. Homework at elementary doesn't do any good. I wrote a lovely letter to all my students and their parents, said, hey, this year, your homework assignment is to do independent reading every night, 20, 25 minutes. That's all you have to do. That is your homework. Went along. A few months later, I get a call from my principal. I go down to her office and she goes, so I got this call from a parent who wants to know why you're not doing any homework this year. I was like, well, I am doing homework. The kids have to read independently each night. And she goes, when were you going to tell me about this? And I realized, ooh, I forgot to tell her about like my grand ideas and my revelations and things. So she wasn't able to support me because I hadn't told her. And she's like, look, the school handbook says you have to assign homework, and no, you can't do just reading. So you have to do something. And I was like, okay, fine. And then I was like, I don't want to just do the homework math sheets all the time. I was like, do I have to grade them? She's like, you don't have to grade homework, but you still have to give it. I was like, okay, you know what? Fine. You guys, here's the math homework sheets. Do them if you want to. Don't do them if you don't want to. I don't care. I'm not grading them, but I'm required to give them to you. And the kids were like, really? We don't have to do it? It's like, I don't care. And they're like, why are you giving it to us? Because my boss says I have to. And sometimes you got to do things that you don't really want to. But, if your boss tells you you have to, you do it. And then shortly after that was like the grand epiphany for me was at a restaurant, and a server comes up and is like, would you like anything to drink? And it's like, no, thanks, we're fine. And the server comes back with glasses of water for my wife and I. And I was like, it's interesting. If you go to a restaurant where you're going to sit down, they always bring you water or they bring you something to drink. And if you say no, they're still going to give it to you. It is a non-negotiable. If you're at a restaurant, you get a drink. Like, even if you're like, no, I don't want anything to drink. Too bad. That water is showing up. And it's like, for me, that was what I wanted that independent reading to be, was my one non-negotiable. My students needed to do reading every single night. But then at a restaurant, you have this menu of all these options. You don't do everything on the menu. You don't go to a restaurant and be like, yes, I would like one of everything. You pick from that menu. And I thought to myself, this is what my homework needs to be. Now, interesting side point, I had never heard of choice boards, had never encountered them at all. And it was just, the idea had just come to me like very independently, just give my student a list of choices and say, you have to do reading, pick something else on this menu. And that's your homework. If you want to turn it in, you can. If you don't want to, you don't have to. But your homework is to read and do something else. And I categorized. I had things like literacy and math and social studies, science, inquiry. I ended up adding in social emotional learning. And I put in options for it. Like, some of the math was like, help your parents prepare a meal following a recipe. So it wasn't just doing like math worksheets. And it was like physical fitness and art was like, do your piano lessons or go for a walk. Like, go outside and expose yourself to the sun, and we will call that good, because heaven knows you all need it. I put this homework menu. Originally, I just typed up a list, put it on a sheet of paper, printed off. My wife is also a graphic designer. She looked at it and she's like, honey, no, you cannot give this to your kids. If you're going to tell them it's a menu, it needs to be a menu. So she created a graphic that looks like a restaurant menu. And she named it. It was like I was Mr. Valencic. I was teaching 4th grade. So we called it the V4 homework menu. It had pictures of like the foods and the drinks. The kids loved it. And I had more kids turning in homework the rest of that year than I had before. And it's like, wait, why are you guys turning this in? You don't have to. And I'm like, yeah, but we want to show you what we're doing. And I was like, that is phenomenal. And I shared it out on Twitter during like a Saturday morning chat, and it had like this huge level of engagement. And people are like, can I get a copy of that? I was like, oh, let me figure this out. Like, so I made it a blank fillable template, had the categories, and people could put in whatever they wanted. And I've had lots of people ask me about it. Honestly, I have no idea if anyone's ever actually used it, but people have always been very excited when they see it, and they've asked for copies of it. I had a high school teacher who even adapted and created like an order ticket for it. So kids would write down what their order was. So then they could turn it in the next day and be like, look, I actually did the homework. And he was like, this is cool. I was like, that was a great idea. I should have done that too. So yeah, that's kind of, I'd like to say that was the short version, but I feel like it may have actually been a bit long. But
No, I love it. I love all of it. I want to point out that the menu itself, the link to the template, is on my website with the resources for this chapter. So jcasatodd.com/hopes for school, and you'll see the resources there. But so much to unpack there, Alex. So first of all, and I think I certainly acknowledge it in the chapter. Karen, I think, acknowledges it too, the research around homework, but also that push and pull between parents and wanting their kids to have homework, right? Yeah. And that push and pull with administrators, and the fact that many of our districts give us, I know in my district, there's like a reference for the amount of homework that people should get. The amount of time spent, I thought that really like resonated with me too. And I thought about, do we tell our kids what the approximate time they should spend on this should be, right? So that they are protecting their mental health and well-being. I love that there is so much autonomy in terms of what kids can do. And that's really what this book is all about. Yeah, like just so many layers there. I love it. I do wonder though, because we started creating the book, and I know I asked for your idea spotlight, I don't know, like a year ago, maybe longer. Like this has been a long process with this book. And since then, AI is a thing. And so the other day I was, because I've been substituting a little bit here and there, and I was in a class, and I think it was a grade 11 class, and the students were on AI, they were on ChatGPT, and I said, hey, what, like, is that helping you to learn, or is that taking away from your learning? And the student said to me something really interesting. He said, I did the first 5 problems in my head because I know that I need to understand them, but we got 20. So I'm just using ChatGPT for the other 15. And I thought, oh, wow, right? Like how much is overkill, right? And so AI exists. What might you do differently with your homework menu? Would you do anything differently? What do you think?
Yeah, I think that I would have definitely increased the amount of suggestions and recommendations for the social emotional learning side of it, and also like the physical activity and fine arts. So the original menu didn't include SEL at all. That actually got added after I was at a statewide conference talking about it. And the teacher came up to me afterwards. It's like, you know what you're missing from this menu is the social emotional learning components. And I was like, you're absolutely right. I was like, yeah, I need to like go home right away and add that. So the original menu, like I had the list of possible activities the students could do for each of the categories of like reading and writing, and was like, here are things you could do. And like mathematics, here are things you could do, and even reference like websites we use, like online tools. But if I look at those now, there are a lot of them that could be done pulling in AI, especially like the writing pieces. And I remember a friend of mine, he talked about when he was an elementary school principal, he got like an Alexa, and he put in every single classroom and told the teachers, your students are allowed to go and ask Alexa any question any time of the day for any of their assignments. And if you're giving them questions that they can go, hey, Alexa, what's the population in New York City? And it can give the answer, said that's on you, not them. So I think that I would take that menu and try to focus it down on making sure that I'm not giving students tasks that they can do, that they can just have AI do it for them. So AI can't do the social emotional learning for them. When it's something like take your little sister for a walk and help her identify shapes that she sees as she's going along, or help your family make dinner tonight following the recipe, those kinds of things, to really pull it away from the, I don't want students to do things that they're doing it just because they have to. And if AI can give the answers to them, we need to give them better questions. So not sure exactly how to tweak all of it, but that would definitely be a cut down the things that are manual regurgitation and really focus more on tasks that are requiring them to just do something.
Yeah. And I think when I think about even the example that we talk about in terms of AI and homework is it's okay if AI does it, because the real work and the real discussion might actually happen the next day when we're talking about our homework and maybe sharing what it is that we did, right? So that's the authentic human piece too. Okay, so you work to support lots of teachers in lots of schools. Can you share an example? It doesn't have to be around homework, but an example of school done right, because there are lots of teachers doing really great things. So what is one thing that you've seen that you're like, whoa, this is awesome?
Yeah. So I'll use an example of something. There's the math curriculum that we use in my school district, which I'm going to say is like, this isn't an advertisement for this program, because what it is, though, it's the Math Learning Center has their elementary curriculum is called Bridges in Mathematics, and they have a component that's called Number Corner. And Number Corner is just a systematic approach to doing math talks or number talks in the classroom. So if someone's not familiar with what that is you give a problem and get the students to just think through, how would I solve this problem? It's not about actually solving it. It's about thinking through and intentionally using mathematical vocabulary to identify, like, what are the steps I would take? Am I seeing patterns in this? Am I seeing keywords that indicate what kind of operation might I be doing? But Number Corner Math Talks really focus on the students are the ones who are doing the work. So what I love about this really is the school done right is when I get to go into classrooms across my district. We're an EC-12 district, but this program is used for kindergarten through fifth grade. I go into a classroom, and sometimes I would say it's not school done wrong, but not quite where we want it. The teacher's doing all the talking with this Number Corner. But what I love going in is when I see the teacher sitting kind of to the back with the clipboard making notes, and there's a student at the front with the pointer, which, in our schools, I don't know why, but we all use like the big plastic pointer with like the hand and the index finger on it. And they're using it, they're pointing and they're talking and they're guiding the conversation with their classmates. And I see this happen in kindergarten classrooms, in first grade, as well as like the fourth and fifth grade classrooms. And what I love is the students are the ones having the mathematical discussion. And when someone makes a mistake, they don't get ridiculed. They don't like get laughed at for it. A classmate will just raise their hand and they'll call on them and like, I see what you were thinking when you did this, but did you consider maybe trying to do it this way? And they'll try to explain. Sometimes you'll see a student's like, can I come up and show you what I'm thinking? And they'll come up and like, they'll get like the dry erase marker and they'll start writing out their ideas. And I'm just sitting there like, wow, like the teacher's just there making sure that it's staying on track. And if they get off track, the teacher is going to correct them to get them back to where they need to be. But I love that, like this idea of the number talk, math talk, intentional talk. Like I've got like half a dozen books on my bookshelf at work that all have different titles for the same concept, but it's having the students doing the work. And I remember years ago, I don't remember who said it. It was probably someone like Todd Whitaker, because he's one, like, he says these things and people quote him all the time, but it may have been someone else. Is the idea that at the end of the day, who did the most work? Was it the teacher or the students? The teacher should not be the ones going home exhausted at the end of the day. It's the students should be going home exhausted because they've been using their brains all day long. And that's what I see happening with like this Number Corner. And again, like that's just what it's called in our curriculum. And I know that there are other programs that do similar things. And I just love seeing the students are the ones doing the work and the teacher is there to guide them, to help them and move them along.
Oh, I love that. And I think we might call it something different too, but number corner, just to clarify, is it one student in front of the whole class or is it small groups at different points in the class?
It's done as one student with the whole class. So like it has
okay.
like, they have like, there's like this big chart thing that has, and it's literally put in the corner of the room, which is why it's called the number corner. But they have like a calendar grid where there's cards that go in to create patterns. So this kids start looking, they're like, oh, what is the pattern that's developing? And it takes a few days for the pattern to develop. And then they have like a problem and a prompt. And some of the grades, they even incorporate things like, what's the weather like today? Because in early grades, like it's this fascinating idea to have kids like debate, is it cloudy? Is it mostly cloudy, mostly sunny? Do we even know if those mean two completely different things? So yeah, so it's once, and they change it up every day. So it's never the same student leading the discussion.
Okay, that's really neat. So two things to that. Number one, again, I was substituting because I seem to be doing that a lot lately. And it was a math class. And I was like, why did I take this job? I'm not really confident with math. And it was a grade 11 open math class. And on the schedule, it said, Victoria and Olivia will teach this class. And I was like, who are these like student teachers who are coming in on placement? No, it was two students who had broken down the lesson in a way that they understood it, stood at the front of the class, taught the lesson. So I didn't have to do anything, which I thought sounds a lot like your number talk. I was also thinking as you were speaking that when you came in to witness that and they were building on each other's ideas and adding, I feel like that would have been work on the teacher's part to begin with, like to be able to scaffold that in such a way that kids would then feel comfortable, like, adding to ideas and, being respectful when they're disagreeing and not, getting, saying anything disrespectful when there's a mistake made. So I love that. And then in Ontario, we have, it's Peter Lilligit, I think is the way you pronounce his name, building thinking classrooms.
Yep.
And so that same idea, but it's like at vertical whiteboards around the classroom and not just in math, but all of it. So thank you for sharing all of those goodies. I love those ideas.
Yeah, and I will say there is definitely a lot of that front loading on the teacher's part to get the students to that student-led and directed. I was thinking it's kind of like when you see those videos online of like the classrooms are like, here's a model classroom. You're like, okay, but like how many adults are in the room? And there's cameras and microphones. Of course the kids are being well behaved. And it's like, well, yeah, but they also spent like weeks or months building up to that point. That wasn't happening on day one for sure.
Yeah, but I do think like the biggest takeaway is whoever, and I don't know who said it either, but I've been saying it for years. I say it with my pre-service teachers, whoever's doing the most talking is doing the most learning. So if your kids are not talking at all in your class, what's happening, right?
Yep.
Yeah. Okay. So question, very broad, but what are your hopes for school?
My hopes for school, I'm actually going to take it all the way back to that fourth grade classroom. One day, and promise I'm going somewhere with it, I had a student who got stuck on a problem and raised her hand. I came over and she said, Mr. Valencic, can you just tell me the answer to this? I was like, no. And she's like, but you're the teacher. It's your job to tell us the answers. And I literally just broke out laughing, like deep, uncontrollable, hysterical laughter. And I look at it now, I'm like, I feel so bad because this was like a 10-year-old girl that I'm just like laughing at, like almost tears coming down my face. And then I was like, my job is not to tell you the answers. My job is to help you learn how you learn so that you can learn without anyone telling you what to learn. I totally came up with that on the spot. And then I was like, no, that's my job. My like calling as an educator is to help students learn how they learn. And I'm not talking about like the learning styles, which drives me crazy when people are like, I'm a visual learner. I'm like, you don't learn how to ride a bike by looking at pictures of people riding a bike. Like, can we like tangent, right? But it's like, can we please put the specific learning styles to rest? They don't mean what you think they mean. But it's like, no, it's like, how do you learn? Like, what is the actual process of learning? And like, I view schools being, that's our job, help students learn how they learn so that they can learn without anyone telling them what to learn. I think about your example of those 2 students in that 11th grade math class. They didn't need you to tell them what to learn. They were the ones teaching and leading it. That is my hope for schools, is that we become a place where we are not focused on delivering content. And to paraphrase a mentor of mine, it's not about covering the content. It's using the content to cover our students in high quality inquiry-based learning so that they can learn on their own. That is my hope for schools, is it becomes a place where students are learning for the sake of learning. What an amazing thing for them to be able to do. For some of them, it's like, I mean, we have some who it's from like 3 years old until they're 18. They get like 15 years of their life where their only responsibility is to learn. Like, they don't have to worry about paying bills, most of them. We have some who do, right? But for the most part, it's like, you don't have to worry about paying bills. You don't have to decide what to make for dinner each night. You don't have to even decide, like, where you're going to live. You just get to focus on learning. That is ultimately my hope for schools, that all schools can be a place that's focused on helping students learn how they learn so that they can learn without anyone telling them what to learn.
If Karen were here, and she's not, and I don't want to speak for her, but that really, I think, is something that is close to her heart. This idea of school should be a place of learning. And for her, in many moments it was, but in many moments it wasn't. So thank you for sharing that so clearly and articulately. All right, so we're going to end with something a little bit fun. No pressure. What are you currently reading, and or what are you currently watching?
So currently reading, I've got like a number of different books I'm working through. One time I was asked this question, I had like 6 books at once, and the host is like, dude, you can't just like rattle off 6 books. I'm like, well, I'm sorry, I'm reading 6 books right now. But I'm reading Shawn Acor's The Happiness Advantage. And then I'm also reading, I don't remember the author's name, but it's Dopamine Nation. And then also working through a book called The Internal Coherence Framework. So we've got The Happiness Advantage, which is just this idea of positive psychology. Dopamine Nation, we really need to break our addiction to the happy little bing on our phones that just gives the constant like positive thing. And then a book that's about how do we get school improvement to actually focus on school improvement and not creating school improvement plans that we create in August and we don't look at again until May. So those are like the top 3. And then my wife and I are watching Young Sheldon, but also the last season of Handmaid's Tale. So it's a very, very different world. Like, we're like, whoa, wait, hold on. Maybe we should just focus on just one.
Classic dystopian novel by Canadian author Margaret Atwood. I remember teaching that for many, many years. So thank you. And thank you so much, Alex, for being on the program, for contributing an idea spotlight to our book. We're so grateful. And for this conversation, because I always love to converse with you. So thank you so much.
Thank you. This has been a lot of fun.
For sure. Take care. Until next time, everyone. Have a great day.